What is going on, Neon Nation, and welcome back to the channel where today we're going to be going over the top 8 most gut-wrenching, horrifying gigs in Cyberpunk 2077 that will paint a picture on the depravity of its residents beyond the glitz and glamour of Night City's exterior. These are snapshots into the seedy underbelly of NC, and might have you feeling like you need to take a break from playing. I recently went over every single one of the over 90 gigs to see which ones are the most bone-chilling, including reading all the associated emails and shards, and getting as much context as possible. So today I wanted to share these disturbing gigs and highlight what truly make them so brutal. This is in order, with number 1 being the most horrific in my humble opinion, so without further ado, let's get into the list. At number 8 on the list, we have the gig Backs Against the Wall, which takes place on Columbus Street in Watson. This gig starts off with you trying to track down the thief of some medicine that's been stolen from a local ripper dog. With only 3% of the population in Night City able to afford healthcare, this is a rampant problem and has led to those that are desperate enough to start breaking into clinics and stealing whatever it is that they need. These particular meds that have been stolen have a GPS tracker inside, and you're tasked with finding whoever stole them and bringing back the goods for Regina's ripper dog. This particular building is dilapidated and filled with squatting braindance addicts, crumbling concrete, trash, and the sound of gunfire. So you know stepping into this, you're probably dealing with someone who's at the end of their wits and likely very volatile. There are a few skill checks here that give you quicker access to the unit that you need to infiltrate, but if not, an open window and a simple jump across the balconies will have you inside. This is where the anxiety starts to build as you scan this large empty apartment searching for the meds, but also keeping a keen eye out for anyone else. Eventually you'll come across Corporal Hare, a veteran dancing along the edge of cyberpsychosis who has stolen baloperidol, the alleged antidote to this affliction. The baloperidol isn't working for Hare, and you can either talk him down with reason and logic, which he gives into, or outright maim him and walk out with the meds. Silverhand does have a soft spot for war veterans, and for his sake you might want to de-escalate the situation. Once you do, Hare will put away his weapon and take a seat. The kicker here is that even if you did manage to talk him down, his brain has already been eroded from the PTSD and cyberpsychosis that you end up hearing a gunshot as you leave, and returning will show Corporal Hare slumped over, a result that you can't alter with any variation of dialogue choices. Now there are some tidbits that you might have missed in this gig that give a bit more context into Hare and his mentality. The first is an email from a friend and fellow veteran Liam Tyler, encouraging him to return to therapy or some sort of PTSD support group meeting. Really seems that these people are being very well intentioned, but Hare is just too far gone. The second one is far more insidious and comes from a voodoo boy known as Nightmare. It seems that Hare occasionally jacks into the net, and the last time that he did, this unsavory individual hacked his coprocessor and installed a virus in it. He blackmails him for 1,000 eddies, which is possibly why Hare wanted the stolen meds, or maybe this pushed him even further into despair. This virus also installed a spy cam into Hare's Kuroshis, so that Nightmare would know when the email was opened, which would trigger the 2-day countdown for payment. I know a lot of people don't feel strongly either way about the voodoo boys, thinking that they're relatively tame, but this quest honestly made me really hate them. This one hits really hard because it shows just how helpless Night City is in getting access to healthcare and that veterans rarely get support, mirroring the current state of the modern day US. This is one of those quests where there is no saving this guy, even if you use the best intended dialogue options. It also poses the question on if violence is necessary to enact change. The media would probably brand him as a cyberpsycho if he did go after Holt like he was mentioning, but who knows what trajectory this would have put Night City on, and maybe just maybe it would have ended up being a net positive. But really, who are we kidding? This is Night City after all. At number 7, we have Family Matters, a gig given to you by El Capitan. One of his connects, Juliet Horrigan, has gone radio silent for 2 weeks after she was supposed to deliver Zetatech data to him. Your job is to see what happened to her, but mainly to get said data back for the district's fixer. As you enter the house through an open window, you're greeted with a whole pharmacy worth of meds and the signs of a struggle. There's blood on a dresser that is 3 months old and a used first aid kit. If you stop and browse the emails on the computer, you find that Juliet's sister, Rose, recently reached out to her in an email filled with red flags. It seems that Rose recently lost her corporate job that required her to install a staggering amount of Chrome. She even mentions about how they used to yell into the void of the Petrochem Dam as kids, but that she's also hearing voices in her head lately, showing that she's really beginning to lose grip on reality. Juliet offers Rose a place to stay with what is likely her husband or roommate Sai. You can also see Rose has received emails on this computer, and it does look like she's been missing her Ripper Doc appointments at Clean Cut. On another computer, you can see that Juliet did reach out to our Ripper Doc Vic instead of Clean Cut, and he spills the details that there are only 2 ways for this to end, both involving MaxTac. The implication here is that MaxTac will either end up killing her, or will place her in a brain dance rehab program, similarly to how Melissa Rory was rehabilitated from Cyberpsycho to a member of the MaxTac team. Juliet and Rose's mother, Clara, is also roped into the email threads after Rose called her over 40 times, but Juliet assures her that something might be faulty with just one of her many implants. In a later gig, Last Login, there's a file on a computer that you can see to what degree Rose was more machine than human. According to this upgrade log, Rose received a left arm hydraulic upgrade, a Sin skin graft, and a subdermal hologram, all which take a big toll on your humanity. Eventually, you're led to the basement where Rose has slaughtered her sister Juliet and Sai, and you have to neutralize her as she's gone fully cyber psycho. In a shard, you can see that Rose believed that Juliet and Sai were working for the corp that fired her, and that they were actively trying to poison her. She'd also reached out to a Bernard Ackerman, who thinks she's flat out crazy and blocks her. An illness diary can be found as well, which shows that Juliet was tracking Rose's condition for months, with symptoms and attacks being charted. Rose attacks them both multiple times, all while funds were running dry for all the meds needed to sedate Rose's mind. There's also a little Easter egg here if you remember the infamous Day 91 Cyberpunk fiasco, where there were back-to-back delays at the Day 91 mark, with a Day 91 entry that mentions yet another attack and having to give Rose a 4 times dose of medication. Coming in at number 6, we have An Eye for an Eye, a gig that Padre gives you in Wellsprings. The most disturbing gigs in Cyberpunk involve children, and this one is no different. In this quest, you're given a hit for Tucker Albat, a high-fangled corpo who works for Kuroshi. She recently was involved in a hit and run in the middle of the night that killed 17-year-old Rosita, and the family wants revenge. The NCPD aren't getting involved, and her insurance covers vehicular manslaughter, which is absolutely crazy to me. You find Tucker, who mentions that the compensation for insurance has already been paid out, and that she's vindicated from further responsibility. She tries to pay you off and mentions that she'll transfer to another district if you spare her life. Naturally, I fed her the line that she was going to be walking out of there in one piece, and that I would take the bribe, before living up to the name of this gig and throwing my blade right into her eye socket. I nicked her access key and raided her safe anyways, and I have a feeling most players did this as well. If you didn't, you're just kind of an asshole. Reading her emails, you'll see that she did get punishment from higher-ups for her negligence with this whole incident, that she was drunk, that she had important documents in the vehicle at the time. Her mess-up also changed the dynamics within Kuroshi, as a new director was hired, a director that's previously butt heads with Tucker. As a result, Tucker was looking into beefing up her security. Didn't mean a damn thing to me though. An archived conversation shows a message from Marlon Fusino, Rosita, the victim's father. He mentions that he was saving up for her education, but now is using that money to hire the best merc. You can see in an email exchange prior that Tucker's staff did not take this lightly and passed this letter on to the NCPD. This one is disturbing because despite its short length, this felt like a story that could actually happen. This one really dialed in the realism for me, and the lack of empathy was just downright depressing throughout. At number 5, we have Going Away Party. This is an extraction-styled gig where you have to retrieve Flavio, a 6th Street member who, after an internal coup, was caught with loyalties to the losing side of the struggle. The 6th Street want him gone, and there's a bounty on his head. You have to get him out of there so that he can meet up with the nomads who are looking to escort him out of the city. As you pull up to this gig, you'll see this 6th Streeter shoot a woman in broad daylight, something that will make a little bit more sense as you get into the house. Reading some emails, you'll see that El Capitan gave him strict instructions to lay low, and as you make your way upstairs, you can see the bodies of Joy Toys strewn around like confetti. Entering the main room where your target is, you're greeted with an absolute bloodbath and with him passed out and wounded in the middle of it all. You wake his gonk ass up and find out that instead of laying low, he rounded up all the Joy Toys and drugs in the district for one last hurrah. A psychotic episode from all the boosters he took led to all this carnage, with everyone but him slaughtered in the process. A real upstanding citizen if you ask me. At number 4, we have the Cuckoo's Nest, where you have to retrieve a good cop that's been locked away in Night City's Center for Behavioral Health. This place is just creepy as hell, and is like Fort Knox to sneak into. Once you're in, if you haven't already engaged in combat, you can hear what sounds like staff beating the residents in a room that is inaccessible to us. Reading the emails and paying attention to some conversations inside also show the disturbing ways they operate this mental institution. Reception tells a family member that they can't visit a loved one, We get hints that forced therapy is being implemented, and to make things even worse, this looks like a testbed for Biotechnica and their new chemical concoctions. One message talks about Cyzolon and Biotechnica's new clinical trial of the drug. They want to experiment on pregnant women with the drug and monitor the frequency of miscarriages and the effect on fetal development on the hush. Heading to the bathroom, you can see all of this was too much for this patient here, and Johnny even spots a comrade that he had in the war who has lost his mind. While losing your mind to cyberpsychosis is common in the dark future, so is flat-out PTSD from all the conflicts, and seeing the effects it has on the human psyche is brutal to say the least. The other patients don't have it much better either. Just check out some of the rooms they're in and what that says about their mental state. If you guys have ever seen the movie Requiem for a Dream and remember the ending scene where Sarah has completely dissociated and lost her mind, I felt like this gig gave me a similar feeling. At number 3, we have a gig called Small Man, Big Evil, set in the slums of Kabuki. In this one, you're tasked with taking out a guy named Jae-hoon, a human trafficker who rounds up unsuspecting people on the street, sends them off to the scavs to have their cyberware harvested and their identities purged. He then provides them to another real piece of work, Jotaro, as property to record snuff XBDs. These guys target outcasts, loners, and rejects, essentially all the people that no one would know have gone missing. This one is just flat out malevolent because our fixer Regina mentions that he's only one cog in this dirty network, and that even by suppressing him, this will continue to go on. Not only this, but one guy in this dude's entourage hit me with the most aggressive T-pose I've ever seen in my life, lulled me into a sense of security, and then started to fire away. Anyways, you can find Jae-hoon and end his run, but the files on his computer are extremely concerning. You can see that he's rounded up some people, and sends instructions to Jotaro to make sure that post-scavs they don't develop infections. He also implants GPS trackers in them so they can never escape, and this email downright makes you feel like you need a shower and a stiff drink after. There's also a follow-up email where a little boy has a seizure while Jae-hoon is in possession of him. And there's also a list of targets selected for the weeks to come, which shows that he preys on the young and the vulnerable. This one just seriously makes me mad, and it makes me want to kill every single scavenger and every single tiger claw on site. At number 2, we have Bloody Ritual, and this one is not only disturbing, but it leads to a crazy rabbit hole theory that involves the Maelstrom, Night Corp, Gary the Prophet, Mr. Blue Eyes, the Black Wall, and the Rogue AIs. I'll link the conspiracy theory video I made on this in the description and pinned comment, but a TLDR here is that Night Corp has a vested interest in leveraging rogue AIs for their own political agenda and has been caught experimenting on its own employees with this kind of mind control. Bloody Ritual is a cyberpsycho fight where you have to take down Zarya Hughes, who has murdered her chooms in a weird bridge to the old net ritual, where she's trying to summon a rogue AI known as Lilith, hinting at her being a vessel for whatever or whoever she's trying to connect to. Lilith is also referenced to in a secret quest with a meeting between the Maelstrom and an unknown organization, so again, check out that video in the description for more on that. Once you scan enough clues, Zarya will emerge from the ice bath of blood and guts and attack you, zapping you in the process and making these terrifying breathing sounds. The whole quest is the most disturbing cyberpsycho quest by far, and has some pretty huge implications for the future of the franchise. At number 1, we have Dirty Biz, a thievery gig where you're tasked with retrieving the raw braindance footage of a murder of a televangelist's son. This braindance is guarded by the Maelstrom members, but once you make your way past them, you'll meet a father and son duo, Gottfried and Frederick, that edit these snuff XBDs. These guys go in and edit braindances to tweak the emotional response you get when viewing them, making them more potent, adding greater adrenaline spikes, and increased detail and emotion. You end up waking these sickos up mid-edit to interrogate them on the location of the XBD you need, and eventually they give you the location of the braindance once you explain to them the specifics. Emails to Gottfried show the pure disgust others have for involving his kid in his edits, and one file in particular on it is probably the most revolting thing that you will see in the entire game. I'm not even going to read this one out, you guys can do it yourself with the panel on screen. Safe to say these guys are the absolute bottom of the barrel, and every time I do this gig, no one walks away alive. Gottfried tries to talk you out of killing them because they're simply editing the footage they receive, but in a gig later on called A Lack of Empathy, we can see that they actually do a little bit more than that, as the duo sends a message asking about if a kid with a tattoo is still alive, and if they can use him in a BD. It looks like this kid is in critical shape, but these guys only care about their scrolls. Anyways, those were the top 8 most messed up gigs in Cyberpunk. Let me know which one you personally think is the worst. And do subscribe to the channel for more Cyberpunk content just like this.